Well, I'm here in Manning Provincial Park in BC on this Monday, September 24th, I think it is. And I'm about just on a day trip again, like I usually do with this bike. And I pretty much, let's see how far I am away from home, 248 kilometers, which is the furthest point, and then I'll head back and probably talk about the bike here a little while. And really, this is the kind of trip this bike is made for. So I'll end up doing, I guess, about a 500 kilometer ride today. Start at 6 in the morning. It's just after 9, I think. So this bike is ideal. I mean, when you think of the cost of this bike, it's probably, depending where you are and what kind of deals you can get, somewhere between $15,000 and $18,000. And you know, there's a hell of a lot of motorcycles you can get for that price. A lot of really nice motorcycles. So you really got to be particular what you buy and what you really want when you're going to spend that kind of coin. And there's so much choice out there. This bike here is very purposeful. I would not call this an all-rounder. To me, the purpose of this bike is exactly what I've used it for today. 3 to 6 hour day trip. On a highway, of course, preferably a curvy highway, not too tight corners, but nice sweeping corners. This bike is awesome for. There's limited amount of luggage, so I wouldn't call it an overnighter, like a Goldwing, for instance. This is a kind of it's perfect. I keep my cameras, I keep an extra helmet in here, a little lunch kit with coffee, some sandwiches or juices, bars, that kind of thing in the other one. Extra layer put on or take off. Maybe an extra gloves in case I want to switch it up. So it's really ideal for kind of a day trip like I use it for, like I'm doing right now. I'll be gone maybe 6 hours on the bike. And it's also kind of a bike it has a sporty nature, and I'm glad I'm doing this kind of reevaluation after I got the new tires that I put about 1,000 clicks on now, because it made a huge difference in the ride and handling in this bike. The original stock tires, these Dunlop 220s, absolute crap when you compare them, and I'm not talking about because they're worn. I never got the feeling of confidence that I'm getting with these tires now. Those tires, those Dunlops, I really don't think they could carry the weight of this bike. Wishy-washy on the rear end. Really, you had to make adjustments through the corner. On these tires, which are the Bridgestone's BT020s, totally different feel of the bike. Now this bike, I can say, feels like a sport bike instead of just a touring bike. You can really take the corners with confidence now and without any adjustments throughout the corner. So anyway, the tires make a huge difference on a bike like this. And these tires here, light years ahead of those crappy Dunlops that the bike came with. So now that I've got these tires, I can see the potential of this bike, and it is quite a sporty bike once you get, if you want to ride it that way. Let's face it, you can just tour around with it and keep the revs low. The brakes continue to impress me. I really love the brakes on this bike. Not only the bite, but the feel of them. You just want to use the brakes. So that means you can get into the corners a lot faster. Enter those corners faster, knowing you've got brakes that are so stable, feel so good. And you can really adjust your speed really nicely. The motor is not a dramatic motor. So if you're looking for a high revving, banshee screaming motor, this is not it. This V4 is very unobtrusive. It doesn't make a lot of noise. Even when you open up the throttle, like in some bikes, you'll get a sort of a howl. This bike really doesn't make a lot of sound as far as engine noise. You do feel the vibration and the engine tighten up as it wants to really pound out some power. But, you know, somebody made a comment, and I really think it's a great comment. One word to describe this bike: locomotive. It's heavy, it's powerful, it rides like it's on rails when you've got decent tires, and it just seems indestructible. Not a high adrenaline bike. Like I say, there's a lot of bikes out there, and it depends what you want it for. Like, this is not my only bike. I have a super sport bike. This does not compete with that at all. They're both different types of bikes. I don't know if I had only one bike, if I would get this ST1300. It's a terrific bike, but it doesn't have the flickability, let's say, of a super sport or a lighter bike. It's really good on high speed curves. The tighter a real expert rider. They do use this as a police bike in a lot of towns, so obviously it's good at low speed. I hardly ever ride it in town. Mostly I'm using this just as a highway bike. It's pretty comfortable. The seat, I think I complained about in my first video on this bike, but as I get used to it, I did raise it up one notch. I think there's one more notch it can go. But if you get off the bike every 40 minutes or so, walk around, you're totally refreshed again and you're ready to ride. So it's just a matter of getting off and letting your blood circulate through your ass a little bit. And that seems to solve the problem. I do really wish it had the gear indicator. It really could use a 6th gear for economy reasons, I would think. This is not a bike where you really tool around at the speed limit. You really need to ride this bike. If a person were to ride it faster than the speed limit, anywhere between like 120 and 160 kilometers an hour, it seems to be its sweet spot. Not that I do that, but if I were to, that would be its prime speed area. Over 160, this bike tends to lose its stability. It's definitely not like a super sport, which just is starting to get going about 140, 150, 160. This one sort of hits a wall at about 160 kilometers an hour. There's a little bit too much mass up here. Obviously it'll go faster, but it tends to lose its stability a little bit. There's no reason to go faster than that anyway. On the highway, what this thing excels at is passing. It's 80 to 140 acceleration. I'm talking kilometers an hour now. Is outstanding. There's never a problem passing with this bike. You kick it down from 5th to 4th and hit the throttle and you're gone. It's no drama, no nothing. You're just on your way. So that is really, for me, important on a highway bike, is to be able to pass whenever with no drama. You just get it over with and you're done. And like I say, very little noise out of this motorcycle. It's pretty quiet, which on a long trip is probably a good thing. Although I think some people might miss a little bit of banshee howl as they crank open the throttle. Smoothness of the engine, it's kind of between a V-twin and an inline 4. Inline 4 being the smoothest engine you can possibly get. And it does have a bit of vibration, but it's a nice kind of velvety vibration. Really feels good. It feels good when you open up, the sweet spot as far as enthusiastic riding between 5 and 8,000 RPM. And then I usually cruise around, 35 to 4,500 RPM. It'll pull from about 25, but yeah, and there's not a lot to say bad about the motor or the engine or the bike or the brakes. It's all good stuff. It's a premium quality bike and made pretty much specifically for highway use. What else to say? I think the bike looks great. It's got good aerodynamics for sure. I always ride this thing. They make a big deal of the windshield. I always ride it with totally right down. As it gets up, you get a little bit more. Oh, there's wind comes towards the back. I don't know. I just like it fully on its lowest level. It feels most like a motorcycle that way, and the airstream is totally stable. You don't get any buffeting at all. What else? I've had no issues with the bike, of course, being a Honda. I expect this bike, and that's another thing. Durability. This bike is very under stress. The motor is very under stress. It only revs to 8,500. You get the feeling it could do a lot more. you get the feeling this motor will last and last and last. Yeah, one thing about this bike that again relates to the comment of it being like a locomotive is the low frequency rumble that comes from the V4 here. It's pretty cool. It's always kind of simmering and boiling beneath you. Like I say, it doesn't have that banshee wail of the inline fours, the high revving inline fours, but it's got that constant low frequency rumble like you'd find in a diesel locomotive. And it's got the turbine on the lower revs anyway, that you can hear anyway, that kind of a turbine whine that's kind of cool. People call it the Jetsons. I'm sure the younger generation has no idea what the Jetsons are, but a futuristic kind of turbine kind of thing. And I really kind of like the sound as the revs go up and down, maybe between 25 and 3,500 RPM. That's where it's really most apparent. And it's kind of a unique sound with this V4. It's pretty cool. So yeah, if you're looking for a good day tripper, say from a 3 to 6 hour trip on the highway, you want to go a little faster than the speed limit when you want. You want to have that option. You want to be able to take a corner at a pretty good rate. You want some comfort, some style, some unobtrusive behavior by the bike. It's pretty quiet, like I say. Very good aerodynamics, no wind buffeting. So it's a really nice bike to ride for what I'm doing today. I'm going to cover about 500 kilometers very quickly if I want. Very smooth shifting, terrific brakes. It's a pretty stiff ride if you compare it to, say, that Goldwing I was on the other day. It's fairly stiff. It's sporty ride, but not really, it's not a spine crash or anything like that. Again, brakes outstanding, nice smooth shifting. Could maybe use the 6th gear, I think, for economy. Speaking of which, in town, this is going to be an expensive bike to ride considering the gas prices, because it does take the premium fuel. And even though the highway mileage is pretty good at anywhere between 45 and 50 imperial gallons, you're probably going to drop down to the mid-30s in the city, or it takes a little bit of gas to get this thing going up to speed. And so gas-wise, pretty kind of expensive to run. And I think if you wanted just one vehicle, if you're going to use it for in town, you'd want something maybe a little bit lighter, a little bit more flickable. It doesn't replace a sport bike. As an only bike, probably not. I'd lean more towards a Ninja 1000, FZ1 maybe, Triumph, Speed Triple, those kind of things are kind of in my wheelhouse, but I already have a sport bike, so I'm not really looking for that kind of all-rounder, I guess. I had the V-Strom. This thing replaced the V-Strom, which is this is light years ahead of the V-Strom. But the one thing the V-Strom did do, it handled really rough roads well, and you had the option of going on a dirt road or a forest service road, that kind of thing, which I'm not going to do with this bike here at all. I prefer a digital speedometer rather than the analog that's here. But the ergonomics are really good here. The seat, I raised it up one. It's not bad at all for, long distance. I get off it every now and then. But it's a nice bike to look at as you're riding it. Love the mirrors down low. Some people don't, but I think they're great. I don't like the mirrors sticking out here like in most bikes. To me, you got a better view of the road. Sure, you have to actually lower your eyes a little bit. Big deal. Cool. Love the cans on that. The mufflers are super shiny and pretty cool. So all around, it's a great bike. I would recommend it for the purpose I use it for, and that is mid to long distance riding on the highway, twisty highway, and it's a great day tripper.